But in order for these features and the IPA to become sort of justified to you, why do we do all that to the sounds and the languages of the world, I need to talk about the anatomical basis of how we produce speech. So, we start from inhaling air, just like when we breathe. So it goes into the lungs, and then from the lungs into the larynx, and then into the vocal tract. So we'll see, like, most sounds, like, I'm not showing the lungs, but airflow goes into the lungs, and then with normal breathing we exhale with no other further effort. When we speak, that effort has to be channeled, and the first channel where it goes is the larynx. The larynx is a valve. It can be seen in males like the Adam apple. So, the larynx is a valve. There what we have there is two thickish flaps that may or may not vibrate. And here is a drawing of these flaps, and they have a life-saving function. When we eat, they close to prevent food from going down the trachea and us suffocating. When we speak, they can assume several positions, and they have a function. So those thicky flaps are known as the vocal folds or the vocal cords, depending on whether you want to be musical or not musical. I'm going to stick to the non-musical term. So we'll be calling them the vocal folds. They can close altogether, complete closure, and that's when we produce the glottal stop. There is an aperture that they can produce. That's the glottis. So with an open glottis, the air flows and goes into the vocal tract. This is how we produce, so there is usually no vibration with a completely open glottis. So this is how we produce consonants. And the third position is a narrowed vocal folds, a narrow glottis, and some vibration. This is how we produce voiced sounds and vowels. So there is vibration. So that's the first organ. We have our airflow. Airflow goes into the larynx to produce, like, air stream through the glottis and the vocal folds. And there are two kinds of phonation that may occur. Devoicing or voicing. Devoicing is when we have vibration, and devoicing is when vibration of the vocal folds is not there when expected. So the L is after P is devoiced, and that is indicated by a little circle in transcription. And then the other very important phonation is aspiration. This is when the vocal folds remain open after closure. Okay. There are other kinds of phonations that I'm not going to go through here, but those two are very common and they're important for transcription, phonetic transcription. Okay. So the airflow goes from the larynx and into the pharynx, and then two possible cavities. One is the nasal cavity, the other is the oral cavity. The pharynx is like a vertical tube. It goes up, and the tongue root is its forward wall, and then it reaches into the nasal cavity, where it is restricted by the soft palate or the velum. So we're into the nasal cavity, where the important thing to note is the soft palate or velum. When raised, it closes the airflow, so it cannot enter the nasal cavity. It goes into the oral cavity, the mouth. When it's lowered, the air can go into the nasal cavity as well. Okay. At its end, there is an important flap. It's called the uvula. The uvula, when it vibrates, there are contact points. It's important for the production of several sounds. Okay. So much for the nasal cavity. Into the oral cavity, there are several things that are really important. Now, we went through the soft palate, and we go into the hard palate. If you curve your tongue, you can feel the hard palate reaching into the soft palate. It's like an arch. The hard palate goes then into the alveolar ridge, which is the part of the oral cavity right behind your upper front teeth. Then we go into the lower front teeth, the two lips, upper lower lip, and then the tongue. Most important parts of the tongue are indicated on the drawing. What is not indicated is the tip and the blade. They both constitute here what is indicated as a crown. Then we have the front of the tongue, which is right across the hard palate, and then the back of the tongue, which is right across the soft palate. The front and the back constitute a part that's called the dorsum. Now, why do we know? We have to know all of these things. Well, because we use all of them when we speak. And what is characteristic of speech sounds is, where does the airflow come from? The most common source of airflow are the lungs. So we're speaking of pulmonic sounds. Another term is aggressive sounds. It has to be said that not all sounds of the languages of the world are produced by pulmonic air, but most are. Then we need to know if there is vibration of the vocal folds or it's not. So that there is another dimension. Is there voice? Is there no voice? And then we need to know is, how does the airflow continue? Does it go into the nose or does it go into the mouth? So we have nasal and oral sounds. Suppose it goes into the mouth. Does it flow freely, like for vowels? Or is there any kind of obstruction? That's for consonants. And all of the places that I mentioned, uvula, the soft palate, the hard palate, the alveolar ridge, the teeth, the lips, they're all places of articulation. The tongue does most of the job, and the tongue will, the way that the tongue establishes contact with all of these things will be the manner of articulation. I've spelled all of these things on the handout, but those are like, let's say, if we count them, how many dimensions do we have to describe the sound of speech? Source of airflow, direction of airflow, phonation, presence of voice or no voice, place of articulation, and manner of articulation. The IPA reflects airflow, and it reflects place of articulation, it reflects manner of articulation by single signal signs. Different kinds of phonation are indicated by diacritics. But have you ever seen the vocal tract before? Have you had a lecture about the vocal tract before? If you haven't, this is a lot of information to digest. Okay? But in order to understand the IPA, you need to understand this information as well. There is like, this comes from a book called Understanding Phonology. It's about, it's the same series as Understanding Morphology and Understanding Syntax. I can email you a copy of the book if you, it's not by Hasselman. It's by Carlos Gustafsson or something like that. But I have a copy of the book and I can email it to you, so you can refer to it. There is no way, it's completely senseless for me to sit and go through the IPA if you don't understand why all the divisions of a consonant table are there. The divisions of a consonant, the organization of a consonant table and then of a vowel diagram are based on the biology of speech production. They are not linguistic inventions so we can bore people with them. They have a physiological basis. So this is why I had to say, are we somewhat in the clear, like what the different parts are? Do you need a break?
Yes.
Okay, you need a break. 10 minutes break.